Okay, so we are now going to continue with our series that we have started on what does it mean to return back to the Garden of Eden. And last week we covered some interesting depth that we went into. What I'll do is Elsie is in the process of putting everything together. And for those of you that missed, we will... I'll put it on the YouTube channel, and you can always go and get it from the YouTube channel because it's going to go on there. Because last week I really covered about what happened in the fall in the Garden of Eden, and basically after the Garden of Eden they got thrown out, and then what actually happened in terms of going to read a bit of the book of Enoch to understand the fallen angels. But today I want us to go back and start from the beginning again and just go and look and see, go deeper to understand exactly what are we up against, because I find it's very important. If you do not know what happened in the first few chapters of the book of Genesis, you are not going to know what's going to come, and you're not going to know where we are. And so first I want to start this morning because Carol was having a quiet time. She was having quiet time with Abba. And then Father gave her a page number, which is actually how he normally works with me as well. I normally get like a page number. And then when I get a page number, then he gives me a message from whatever the page number is, and it was the same as with her. And how interesting it is that as he gave her the page number, it just so happens that this page is about returning back to the Garden of Eden. So when the Father is speaking, he's very specific, and he speaks a message, and it's not just going to be for one, but more than one is going to get the message. So I just want to read from Sarah Jubilee's Shema, and it says, I want to restore you back to the garden. In the garden before the fall, my people were close to my heart, and they were sensitive to my spirit. There was no pride that separated us. We walked in unity. My garden is a place of intimacy, and I want you to be restored to the place where you are sensitive to my spirit. Many of my people love me, but they do not live in the garden of intimacy. So you see, there's a difference between saying that we worship him and we love him, but we don't live in that intimate place with him. They long to hear my voice and experience me in a deep way, but they never go through the process of restoration, through which you will become sensitive to my spirit because you walk in intimacy with me. Intimacy with me is a place where you know my desires and abide in them. Hear my voice and obey it. Look upon my face and know that I am. It is the place of sensitivity where you respond to whichever way I connect and communicate with you. Intimacy with me is about closeness. I want you to be close to my heart. Many times I stand right next to my people, and they are so insensitive to me that they are completely unaware. So you see, we're going to have to establish the difference between being religious and being in a relationship that's got to do with intimacy. And I think that's where most of us has gone wrong, because a lot of us think our religious ways is what's making us close to the Father. But we're going to realize that Father is not interested in our works that we do. He's interested in obedience. And that obedience comes from many different ways that we experience what he takes us through. I do not give everyone the same gifts, but it is not a matter of having a gift of seeing visions or dreaming dreams. It is a matter of intimacy with me, where you are spiritually sensitive. You can have precious gifts that are purpose for your life, but without intimacy with me, where you are close to my heart and sensitive to me, you will be unable to walk in the fullness of those gifts. When you operate in my gifts without intimacy, it is not pure anymore. And it can become a show because it doesn't revolve around me. Now you see, that's where the danger comes in. There are many people that are anointed and have giftings, but they're filled with arrogance and pride. There are many people that you will see specifically in the church and specifically in even Torah movement. The gift will operate. We need to understand a gift, when the Father gives you a gift, He doesn't take the gift back. And that's one of the things that the Father's always told me this many years ago. Never judge your right standing with me based on how I use you. I will even use a donkey. So just because He uses you doesn't even mean to say that you stand right with Him. And so many people go wrong and many people fall because Father starts to use you. You come into that place of thinking, wow, I must be so right with the Father. So you can get scriptures, you can get prophetic words, you can get visions, you can get all of that. Doesn't even mean to say that you stand right with Him. Because a gift is going to operate irrespective. Because once a gift is given, it's not going to be taken back. And at the same time, Father is more interested in the fruit than what is interested in the gifts. And that is what we're going to see. Because He's more interested in the fruit. Because a gift is a gift, it can operate. I mean, just because you can prophesy and you can see visions and you can do all these things, doesn't mean to say that you have the fruit of the Ruach. And generally what happens is, and this is where a lot of people go wrong, just when you get saved, many times when you get filled with the Ruach of Yahuwah, you receive the gifts. The call is but the level of the person's spirituality of matureness can be very shallow. But the call is up there, and the gifts can be there, but the fruit can be down here. Because the fruit needs to be developed. The fruit doesn't just come. The gifts are given, they are a gift. But the fruit needs to be cultivated. That's why He's got to prune the tree. That's why He's got to make us be able to develop a fruit. That's why Yeshua cursed the tree that did not bear fruit. That's why He's going to separate the sheep from the goats. That's why He's going to see whoever doesn't bear fruit, He's going to cut them off and throw them in the fire. So we are going to talk about this today because this is the season that we're in now. The season that we're in is having to be a season of fruit. We have to learn to bear fruit. So He says, if you do not walk in the place of intimacy with me, you cannot be truly, you will misuse my gifts if you do not walk in a place of intimacy with me. And you cannot be truly intimate with me without going through the restoration, because through restoration, the wall of separation is removed in you. You are insensitive to my voice because your spiritual senses are defiled. And that is what we're going to have to look at today. You are insensitive because your spiritual senses are defiled. So we need to understand what is defiling our spiritual senses. I want to restore your spiritual senses to my voice, so my voice is louder than any other voice. My touch more tangible, the taste of my love better than wine, the smell of my fragrance better than any perfume. I want to be alive in you. I want you to experience me in the way that I desire, an intimate way. Will you allow me to clean out your senses so that you may hear my voice, because it is part of my restoration? So at the end of the day, we are going to need to allow Him to restore our senses. And for Him to restore our senses, there are things that are blocking us, and we are going to have to see in the Garden of Eden, where did we fall? Because everything starts there. So if we don't return back there, we don't understand. How do you know where we've fallen from? How do you know where you are unless you know where you've fallen from? You first have to know where you've fallen from in order for you to be able to be restored. So you first got to identify where have we fallen from. So he says, I will restore your senses unto me because your senses are not filled with I am, and you will be unable to have communion with me. I want to commune with my children, many who do not hear my voice or experience me in any way, as they think they are not worthy, or they think it is normal because their faith in me is enough, and they will experience me when they go to heaven. So you see, a lot of people feel that, well, I'm only going to have that place when I finally am going to go to heaven. But that's not. We are supposed to, that's what it means to know Him. It's to be intimate with Him. This is not my Father's desire. I do not want you to go to heaven. I want you to live in my house, my kingdom on earth, where you will have intimacy with me daily, because you can freely enter in, but you have to become sensitive. So, this is what we're going to look at today. Today we are going to look at what it truly means to be able to become sensitive to knowing His way, to knowing His will. So, I want us to be able to start going back to Genesis chapter 1. I want you to first see what we were supposed to be. I mean, we were called in Genesis chapter 1, from verses 26 to 28. This is the commission that was given us. So we need to know, where have we fallen from? If you do not know where you've fallen from, then how do you know what needs to be restored? You first have to understand where you've fallen from. So listen to what was spoken over us. And the Lord said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, and over all the earth, over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground. And the Lord created man in His image. In the image of the Lord He created him, male and female He created them. And the Lord blessed them. And the Lord blessed them. And the Lord said to them, be fruitful and increase, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over all the creeping creatures on the earth. So we were given dominion. And He says, see, I've given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the earth, on the face of the earth, and every tree which yields seed. To you it is for food. But He said, listen to what we were supposed to do. We were to be fruitful, increase, fill the earth, subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over all creeping creatures on the earth. We were given dominion over this earth. We were told to reign and rule on this earth. That's why we were created. So we were created to have authority. So now we are living in a time where we will fear the animals. And the animals are not subjected to us, but we instead fear them. And isn't it interesting? I've been told so many times, if the animal can sense your fear, it will attack you. Like a dog. If a dog senses your fear, it will attack you. Because we were actually created to rule over them. But instead, what have we done? We have allowed our senses, and we've allowed many things to come in to steal the authority that was given us by Abba Yahuwah, because the enemy came in to take the authority from us. So we're going to look at, in the very first session, we discussed how Satan came to tempt Eve in the garden. How he came to deceive her. She was deceived. Remember, we read in the garden how she was deceived. Now we're going to read after Eve has eaten the fruit. So let's go look at Genesis chapter 3 from verse 6. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave her husband with her, and he ate. So I want you to see this, because that tree looked desirable. It was pleasant to the eye, and it was good to make one wise. So this is why we so many times want to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because we think that tree is what's going to make us wise. So that is why we want to go and eat from the tree that comes from the rabbis, because those doctrines and the things that the rabbis give us, we look at them and we think they're so wise. And so now we want to go read the Mishnah, and we want to read the Zohar, and we want to read the teachings that come from the rabbis, and the rabbis put the teachings of man above the very Torah of Yahuwah. Because that is what they are drawing from to make them wise. And at the end of the day, what it's doing is puffing you up. And you are not eating from the tree of life. You are eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Even though it looks good, we must remember it is evil. And this is what we need to understand today. That even though that tree might look good, in the end, it's going to be evil. Because what is it doing? It's going to puff us up in pride. It's going to get our senses more and more into seeking man's teaching as opposed to seeking Abba Yahuwah's way. And then we do religious things because we think that's what's making us holy, and meantime behind the scenes it's actually taking us further away from Him. Because our senses have become dulled to His voice and to His way. So He'll tell you, like He said to you, He started to show you that this lighting of candles, what is this about? But we become dull of hearing the Ruach trying to lead us, because we are trying to adhere to our custom and our tradition, because we think this is what's making us holy. And then we become dulled to the Father's way. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. So you see, while they walked in the Garden of Eden, they were naked. And there was no shame of their bodies at all. But now, what do we have? Because we are going to see. They were ashamed because they were naked. And they heard the voice of Yahuwah Elohim walking about in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahuwah among the trees of the garden. They hid themselves. So what happens? The minute we sin, what's the first thing that we do? We hide. And we are shameful of our ways. And so therefore it takes us further away from the Father as opposed to taking us closer to the Father. All He wanted in this garden, we're going to see this account so that we understand clearly. Because at the end of the day, all He wanted was for them to acknowledge that they were sinful, that they had done wrong. That's all He desires. But have you seen how we can make excuses for what we do that is wrong? Mm-hmm. Try and confront a child who does something wrong. Try confront a child. But Mom, but this, and it was because of this, and we make excuses. And that is how human nature is today. And this is why we become dull of our senses to not draw near to Him, because we make excuses before the Father. And we try and put our own parameter of what holiness is before Him, as opposed to understanding His way is very simplistic. But we have complicated the issues. Now, Yahuwah Elohim came unto Adam and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked and so I hid myself." So you see, now he sees himself as being naked because now his eyes are opened, and that is why the Father is wanting to bring us back to that nakedness, because remember, they went and sewed fig leaves and put it on themselves. That is all the things that we put on ourselves because of our shame, of our sin. So, instead of us stripping ourselves of the things, we try and put more things on us to make us look holy before the Father, and we think that He accepts us, and we make our own clothing for ourselves. And this is what we do. And this is how we have put things on ourselves by going to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We have put things on ourselves that He never put on, but they sewed their own fig leaves. Remember, they sewed their own fig leaves and put it on themselves because they ate from the wrong tree. And now they're hiding. And He said, "Who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you should not eat?" Now you need to see what happens. What's the first thing? The man says, "The woman whom you gave to me, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate." Now, did he say, "Yes, I ate of the tree and I'm sorry that I did"? A man will always blame his wife. You need to hear this today. A man will always blame his wife. It's a known fact because it comes from the fallen nature. So the fallen nature will always cause a man to blame his wife. So don't be surprised when your husband seems to blame you for certain things that will go wrong in his life. If something happens to the children, if something happens to whatever, it's your fault. It's you that did it. It's the natural way to be. Because He's done it from the Garden of Eden. Nothing's changed. And it's easy for you to identify this, for you to understand that you are not to go into that place of getting upset and getting angry. It's a natural way of their nature to do that. It's the flesh nature that's going to do that. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" And the woman said, "The Nahesh, the serpent, deceived me and I ate." So she now blames the serpent. He deceived her. But she still had a choice to make in the end. But you see, she acknowledged she was deceived. Because the Nahesh did deceive her. Now, many of us as women, our greatest battle that we fight is against the devil. The enemy does not fight a man as much as he fights a woman. But you will understand why. I will explain to you why. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the woman, and the Nahesh, and Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nahesh, so you see, he first started with a man because he was the head. He was supposed to protect her. He didn't protect her. So instead, he submitted to what she did. So she gave him the fruit and he ate. He was not to submit to her. He was to take his authority and say, "That is wrong. We are not to take of it." But instead, he submitted to the woman. And that is why there is great danger when a man sits and submits to a woman and doesn't go to the Father first. And we will look at that today as well for us to understand. A man is to be able to hear Abba first. And if that man does not, you have to be very careful in telling a man what to do. Very careful. it is better for you to pray to the Father and say, Father, this man is not listening. You deal with him. Than for you to be able to straight tell him what to do. Because this is how Jezebel's spirit comes in quite easily. Because a woman has been doing this from the Garden of Eden. So, Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nahash, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat the dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman. So you see, where's the enmity? Between the Nahash, the serpent, and the woman. He didn't put enmity between the Nahash and the man. He put enmity between the woman and the Nahash. And he says, and between your seed and her seed, he shall crush your head and you shall crush his heel. So the seed of a woman is what the serpent comes after. That is why it's the woman's job to keep the house. It's a woman's job to keep the house, because at the end of the day, if the woman doesn't hold the house together and the woman doesn't guard the house, then the enemy will come against who? Her children. It's the children that he's after. Because if the devil can get your child, he's got you where he wants you. Because if your child goes off the rails, what happens to a mother? So who does the enemy come up against? Because the woman bears the seed, and the seed that she gives birth to is the seed that can crush his head. So if a woman trains up a child in the way that she's to go in Yahuwah, when a mother and a father stand in there, but you know, it's a woman the one that is generally the one who spends more time with the children, because the way it was before, the man would go to work and the woman would be at home, and the woman would be the one training the child. And that is why we are to train up our children in the way of, up to a certain age, it's the mother that is there constantly over those children. And it's the mother the one imparting into those children. So it's the mother's responsibility that she's truly training that child, because the father is the one who's seed bearing. I mean, he's putting food on the table. And the mother, if she's at home, she's the one having to equip those children. So at the end of the day, who does the enemy come up against? If the enemy can get, because he says there will be enmity between her seed, and he shall crush your head and you shall crush his heel. So, who was he speaking about here? That he in my Bible has got a capital. Because from the woman she was going to give birth to a seed that was going to be Yahushua. And in Yahushua, so you must understand, what happened in the Garden of Eden? The fall of man took place, which now from here, they're going to have to leave the garden. And they can no longer be in the garden. But he's already saying, from the woman there shall come forth a seed, and this seed is going to crush the head of the enemy, so that they may once again return back to the Garden of Eden. And that is why the Father once gave me an illustration. I'll share with you the illustration the way the Father gave it to me, for you to understand. Okay, let's just finish, and then I'll give you the illustration. To the woman he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception, bringing forth children in pain, and your desire is for your husband. And he does rule over you. So understand, sometimes that man is going to grind you to the ground, but you are still going to have to submit to him, and your desire will be for him. As long as you are married, your desire will always be for your husband. You are there to have to cover him. You are there to have to serve him. You are there to respect him, to honor him. You are there as a woman to, your desire is going to be for him. So your desire, that is why he says, that's why Paul said, if you're going to want to stay close to the Father, it's better not to marry. Because at the end of the day, you are going to, your time is divided once you are married, and the enemy will come up against you in a marriage. And a woman her desire is, we cook for them, we clean for them, we are there to support them. We are their helper. Do you want a chair?
No, I'm confirming everything in my spirit.
Okay. And so, at the end of the day, that's why I'm saying it is difficult, because once you marry, that man becomes the one, even if you don't agree with him, if he tells you, if the man is now the head of the home, and now he's making a decision, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh Father, this is just not, and it's so difficult, because you know that what he's doing is not right. But he rules over you. He's not there to crush you. He's by your side. Remember, a woman's rib, the Abba Yahuwah took a rib out of Adam. So we are there to cover his heart. We are there to protect the heart. We are there to be able to cover a man. And therefore, when a rib is taken out, the man is not there to lord over you and crush you. You come out of his side, which means you stand by his side. But you are there to protect that man's heart, because that man will be exposed to many things, and you are there to be able to soften that man's heart, not in an evil way, but in a gentle, loving way. And so even if he makes the wrong decision, and you now know, this is now not right, and he's going to lead this family down the wrong way, then your job is not to lord over him and to tell him off. Your job is to go to the Father and say, do you see what your son is doing now? Do you see what he's up to? Do you see this is no good? And you pray, and you speak to the Father, and you ask the Father to change that man's heart. And only the Father can change him. Only the Father can change that man. It's not your job to try and change a man. It's not your job. It's the Father that changes us. But when we start to try and change them, what are we doing? We are taking a place that is not our place to take. That's the place of the Ruach. It's not our job to do that. Our job is to cover him. Our job is to respect him. Our job is to honor him. Our job is not to fight with him over every and anything. I mean, even now, my husband had a decision to make in a job, and in me, I knew that he mustn't take that job. I knew. But you know what? He went for the job interview. I continued to pray, and I said, and I couldn't tell him outright, you mustn't take that job, because that is coming from the enemy. I had to allow him to go that way. And he went to the job the first day, and he came back, and that face, I thought, okay, that doesn't look too good. And then it was a public holiday, then he went back the next day.
I just want to say, I think it's your unbelief. If you don't believe that Father can change stuff,
Exactly.
then you start doing it yourself.
Exactly. So you have to believe that he will change them, even if it takes you through as difficult as what it is. And so, like I said, now the Wednesday he went back to that job, and by the Wednesday he came home, and I looked and I said, and how was the day? It's finished. I said, what? The job. I walked out. That's it. I said, okay.
Thank you, Abba.
But I knew that this job did not come from the Father. I knew it wasn't from the Father. But he wasn't going to listen to me. Because even if I was going to tell him, and watch carefully, because you'll tell him, and what will he do? He will rebel, and he will do exactly what you tell him not to do. Do you know how many times I would sit in that bath, I'd preach up a storm to my husband, we'd spend time together, and now I'll be preaching up a storm, and I think, he got it. He really got it. And I'll tell you something. 2 days later, he's doing exactly the opposite to everything I've just told. And then I look, and then I get so angry. And the Father said, you set yourself up to fall. Because if you had not gone and preached to him, you wouldn't be setting yourself up for failure right now. But you see, because you set yourself up, thinking that by you preaching all the sermon to him, he's going to do what you said to do. He's going to go and do exactly the opposite. And now who's the one who's going to get angry? I am. Why? Because you did what you were not supposed to do. And I had to learn the hard way. I didn't just arrive. I learned the hard way. Years. It took my husband 17 years before he finally submitted to the Father. How many women would put up with something for 17 years? 17 years it took before my husband finally bowed his knee and surrendered to the Father. And before he did that, I won't even tell you what we've had to go through as a family. And you know you're going to go through it. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Because I fasted, I prayed, I did all the spiritual warfare that I knew to do. And still, Father took him through the process that he had to take him through before he bowed his knee. And so that's why I say, Father will do it in his time, not in our time. But our job is to continue to love, to support, to embrace, to endure, because he needs endurance. And that is what is not being taught today to young people. She should have been here. Because this is what's not being taught to young people today. And that's where it already goes wrong from the beginning. It already goes wrong from the beginning. Because at the end of the day, if a woman would understand her place, and a man understand his place, your marriage will come right. And what's not being taught to young people today is how to be able to endure. What is your place as a wife? What is your place as a husband? And knowing this is where you are. Let me tell you something. My husband went to one little course. Years. It was right in the beginning. I just got saved. I was saved like 2-3 years. He went to a course on marriage. And the minute I would say something, he said, "Are you trying to tell me what to do?" And then I thought, what is your problem? He quickly learned that in this marriage, I'm not allowed to tell him what to do. And if there was one thing only he got out of the entire course, there was only one thing he got out of the entire course. Do not tell me what to do. And the minute I tried to say something, he'd say, "Are you trying to tell me what to do? You don't tell me what to do. Do you hear me?" And I think, out of everything other that he could have got out of that course, that was the only thing he got out of an entire course. We went for an entire weekend, and that was the only thing he got out of it. And believe me, that thing put me in my place I don't know how many times. Because I have a strong personality. And I can want to have my say. But you know, when the order is right, it's amazing how that man can shine if the order is right. And you know, the most difficult personality is when you have a personality. Now, if a man is a strong personality, it's easy for a woman to submit. It's very easy. Because she automatically, because he knows that he's the leader, he knows to be able to take charge, he knows to lead, it's not a problem. But when the woman is the strong personality and a man is more passive and more, you know, more calm, and tomorrow's another day, and you know, then she wants to lord over him. And let me tell you, it's not Father's order. And you are not going to have shalom in your house if that order is not right. Because your job is to keep praying that he raise up. Even though you might be raising up, going way ahead of him, but your job is to submit. And even if he's not in line, you still submit. And I know that's difficult. Even if he's not in line, you will still submit. You will still love him. You will still embrace him. You will still respect him. You will still honor him. Because where does divorce and all of that come from? Where do these affairs come from? Because if you are a nag in the house, where does he go? Oh, the secretary's making him coffee, and the secretary's telling him how nice he looks, and the secretary's telling him all these nice things, and the next thing you know, he's going off with the secretary. Because when he comes home, all he's got is a wife that's going to tell him this, and you haven't done this, and this, and everything else. I mean, you know, this is what goes on. And this is the problem. We need to get the order right. And when the order is right, we will start to come right. And we need to start to teach our children from the beginning what's right. So, we look and we see. We're going to understand today what our struggle is. Our struggle that we have is because of this serpent that came into the garden. And if we do not understand what the serpent's function is, we are not going to understand our struggle, and that is why we are many times away from the Father. We need to understand what happened in this chapter. We need to understand chapter 3. We need to understand chapter 4. If we do not understand chapter 3 and we do not understand chapter 4, we will not understand our struggle that we go through constantly throughout life. Because it's here. Everything starts here. So that's why our relationships are broken. That's why everything. So think about it. If the enemy can take out the wife, who's he going to get to? The children. Because the mother is the one that really keeps the home together. And even now, if you see in our law, most of the times, when there's a place, a separation or whatever, who do the children go to? To the mother. Not to the father. Unless the mother has shown that she's really bad. Then the children get given to the father. But in most cases, the children always go to the mother. Because the mother is the one that is there to nurture them. The mother is the one there that is really protecting them. Go and look at that little hen. Go and look at the hen when she has those little chicks. Man, she protects them and she puts them underneath her. You don't see so much the father doing that. You see the mother doing that. When the mother, even the baby, the little kittens, or a mother has a dog or whatever, has the puppies. Who's the one protecting? Who's the one always protecting? Who's the one always nurturing? Most of the time in creation, mainly it's always the mother. You do get those which the mother and the father, like the dove to me, is the doves and the pigeons are the ones that are the most amazing to me. Because the mother and the father take time. They take time. The mother stays longer on the egg, but the father takes his place in going to sit on that egg. They are amazing. And isn't it amazing? You know what I found out as well? A pigeon and a dove, they are the only ones that they stay with the same soulmate. They stay with that mate forever. They mate with that same partner forever. They don't go find another partner. They stay with the same one. I learned enough about pigeons. They were breeding in my veranda when I stayed in Israel. I just wanted them to leave, but we birthed 5 pigeons there. They came forth. And so I learned a lot about them. And I didn't even have to look at the time. I knew that it's 10 o'clock because at 10 o'clock Daddy Pigeon came to sit on that. I knew when it was 4 o'clock because now Daddy leaves and Mommy arrives. I didn't even need to see my watch. They were like clock time. And so, if creation can do that, then how much more should we? And that's why I'm saying we have fallen. And now's the time to return back to the Garden of Eden. And so what is the Father wanting to restore? He's trying to restore the pattern of everything. The pattern has to be restored. The only you see, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Father raises a standard against him. And how's he going to raise the standard against him? By being able to bring in the right order. He's got to raise the standard. So if the standard is out of control, who is going to get it right? At this point in time, not even the Christians have got it right. Because if you look at the way the Christians dress, if you look at the way the Christians carry on, and you look at the divorce rate and everything within the Christians, what the heck have we got going on there? It's even higher than it is in non-believers. And they are the ones that are supposed to be getting it right. But why? Because we have not understood what has happened in the Garden of Eden. So, let me explain to you, because you need to understand what happened here. Now, this is how the Father explained it to me. When the Father explained to me about earth, and he said, you see, when he showed me earth, he said to me, see, earth is like a company. So this is what actually happened here in the garden. It is like a company. So, let's look and see what happened. So right in the beginning, he had a lead angel. That was Lucifer. Okay? That's not his name. It's just Lucifer. Because he doesn't have a name. That's why we call him Ha-Satan. Not Satan. Because if you call him Satan, it's you give him a name. He's got no name. So he is Ha-Satan, the Satan. Because he's got no name. So he's the devil. But he's got no name. But there was a lead angel. And this lead angel, Father gave him all authority over the heavens, over the earth. And he was the lead angel that was in charge of all the angels in heaven. But one day, this angel decided that he wanted to be like Yahuwah. He wanted to be like Abba Yahuwah. And so what did he do? He decided to basically gather the angels and cause what we would see today as a riot. What's going on today? Rioting. So what the Father showed me was like this. Earth was a company. So let's take it, I'm giving you an example here, as Earth being like a company. And there is a CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, over the company, who is Abba Father Yahuwah. And he had this lead angel, the devil, that he put in charge of this company. And he said, you have dominion over everything. Okay? But one day, the managing director, so the devil is like the managing director. He is directing everything, but the CEO is the chief executive officer who is in charge of this company, but he put him in charge and said, right, I want you to run the company for me. That's like in a business. You've got a chief executive officer, but you put a managing director, and the managing director directs the company and runs it for you. And they got many employees working for them. One day, this managing director of the devil decided he wants to have a takeover. He's going to overthrow the CEO, and he wants a takeover of this company. He wants to take it over. So what does he do? He gathers all the staff, gathers all the angels, and says to them, listen, let's overthrow him, and then we can take charge. But only a third of them joined the ranks to overthrow it. And when it came to the CEO's knowledge, he said, right, because of what you've done and your wickedness, I'm chucking you out and I'm putting you on this, I'm throwing you out of this company, and now you are no longer in charge. And I'm going to get a new managing directors to be able to run my company. So when Hasatan was kicked out of heaven, he was put on earth, which is where he was managing anyway, but he was put here with the third of the angels that got thrown out. But now, at the same time, now he's going to put new managing directors in. And who were those people? We were. Adam and Eve were the new managing directors. Now you have all authority to subdue this earth. We've given you all authority. You now have the authority to master over everything here. He gave them authority. But the old managing director was very crafty. And he came to try and take them out once again. The same plan that he did with those angels is the same plan he goes and does with them again. And says to them, no. Listen, you don't need to obey what he tells you. Just go and eat from the street. Just rebel a little bit. And he got them to rebel because he deceived them. Now they've been thrown out of this position as well. Now the place is vacant. So now how are we going to get this right? So now the Father puts in, he's going to have to bring in a new managing director. And who's going to be the managing director? He says to her, listen to what he says. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nahesh, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock, and more cursed more than all the livestock, and on your belly, okay, then he says, I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. So, who does he put there? Yahushua. Yahushua now is going to become the new managing director. But now listen to this. Only the one that you submit to is the one that's going to run this company. Now I need you to hear this carefully. Listen carefully. You need to understand this. What was it said to the Nahesh? It was said, listen to what he says, on your belly you are to go and eat the dust of the days of your life. So, if he crawls on his belly, he's eating the dust of the earth. So you shall live eating the dust of the earth all the days. What are we created out of? The dust. So every single time we are operating in our flesh nature, because our flesh nature is the one that's created of the dust of the earth, then who is running the company? Hasatan. But if we operate in our spirit nature, who is running the earth? Yoshua. So there are two people that can run. That's why, remember, who's this whole earth been given to? The whole earth is under the sway of the devil. Did he not come before Yoshua and say, if you bow down to me, I give you all these kingdoms? So who was in charge of the kingdoms? So who's still in charge today? So there's two kingdoms. There's the kingdom of Hasatan, and then there's the kingdom of Abba Yahuwah. But you see which is the minority? The kingdom of Abba Yahuwah. Why? Because it's easy for us to submit to our flesh nature. And if we submit to our flesh nature, who is controlling the earth? Hasatan. Now do you understand why the Father is saying it's so important that we need to understand, if the devil feeds on our flesh nature, he's feeding from the dust of the earth. We came from what? The dust. So the dust is our flesh nature. It is what this body wants to do. So what the body wants to do, it wants to do, and it will go on its way, and it will do its own thing. And if we do not have the spirit of the Yahuwah within us, leading us and guarding us, then who is leading us and guarding us? Hasatan. And we can be eating from a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is what he gave us to eat. And we thought we were still pleasing the Father because we didn't die. So we can be thinking we are so pleasing to the Father in the things that we do, but we can be so far from him in the meantime. Because think about it. Why does the Father hate our flesh nature to such a degree? What did he say to Esau? Father very seldom in this Bible tells you that he hates something. But who did he hate? He hated Esau. Why did he hate Esau? Because Esau submitted to his flesh nature and gave up his inheritance for a plate of soup. Gave up his inheritance for a plate of soup. And so at the end of the day, is that not exactly what happens today? How many times do we give up the inheritance of reigning and ruling for the kingdom of Yahuwah for our flesh nature? And he said he hated Esau. Because Esau was given an inheritance that he was to be the firstborn, and he received the firstborn inheritance. He had the firstborn inheritance. But he sold that inheritance. He was so desperate. He came back from hunting. He's so desperate, and he's in such a desperate place, and he says to Yaakov, give me a plate of soup now, or I will die. Hello? Is your flesh that important that it's going to die? And if your flesh dies, then so it will die. And it's important that you have to hear this today, because the day is coming that you are going to have to either live or die for his name's sake. So if you're going to want to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you lose your life for his sake, you will gain it. Because everything is about whether we're going to submit to this flesh nature or not. And so then he turns around and he says to Esau, Esau I hated, but Jacob I loved. Yet at the end of the day, Jacob deceived his brother. And yet the Father tells you that he loves Jacob because he saw the zealousness that Jacob had to be the firstborn, to have that inheritance. He was already clutching at his brother's heel. He tried to come out first. He wanted to come out first. And what did he say to Rebekah? In your belly is 2 nations that will be up against each other. And that is what we are going to understand as we're going to look into the scriptures. We are going to understand that there are there's a fight going on between good and evil, between submitting to the flesh, subduing the earth, and ruling and reigning with the Father, or submitting to the devil and having him rule you. And by him ruling you, he's the one who's going to be able to be ruling this earth. And these are the things that we need to understand, that it starts there. It starts with our flesh nature. It starts with the fact of when the Father starts to say to you, you know, my child, I think you need to change this about you. And you say, no, I don't want to. I don't want to change this. I want to hold on to what I've got right now. I like the way this is. I don't want to change this. If you do that, what are you doing already? You are feeding your flesh nature. So do you understand why, to such a degree, we are so far from the Father, and the Father being sensitive to His Spirit? Because we have become so accustomed to having our way and doing our own thing. And the only thing that we've been taught is we've been taught how to obey the word and things like that. But in our own mind, will and emotions, we have not learned to submit. I mean, just yesterday we had an incident that happened over here. And then this young boy comes, and now he's asking me what, and Shama saying, Natalia, what must we do? Because he drank what? Antifreeze. I didn't know what to do. But you know what? I heard the Father say to me, give him milk. And I thought, But he spoke to me, he said, give him milk. I didn't listen. I said, Shama, just Google there. What must we give? Google. What are we going to do the day that Google is not there anymore? Google the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Google. Let's Google everything. And when she Googled, give them milk. I thought, why can I not? Do I trust him enough in what he's telling me for me to go with what he says? But at this moment, it's a critical case, and I'm saying, okay, milk. Hello, and I'm giving milk. And I'm thinking, just Google, Shama. It's better to Google, because maybe what I'm hearing from the Father is not correct. Why? And now, it's this big thing of now, are we going to take him to hospital? And I said, listen, the first thing I went and did, I got my anointing oil and I went and prayed for him and anointed him and prayed for him and rebuked whatever the enemy was trying to do and prayed and said, the day is going to come. You're not going to be able to take them to hospital because this COVID-19, what's going on? You go to the hospital, you're bound to get, well, if they're going to put you there, you might just have to be tested, because everybody that's going into hospital, they test them anyway to find out if they're going to have it or not. So you're going to go there for some stupid thing, and you're going to land up getting tested for COVID-19 in the process. So the day is going to come, you're not going to be able to go to hospital. So where are we going to have to raise up in the authority that we've been given? If Yeshua laid hands on the sick and they recovered, and if we had to rebuke and poison had to be drank and nothing happened to, we have to start living in that. That's the way it's going to have to start being. That's the way we're going to have to start living, because we are not going to have to turn to these things. But you see, for us to get to that place, it's like I said, we've become so insensitive. And I myself am in this place now. It's twice in this week that it's happened to me. And now he's trying to get my attention and say, do you see what you do? You have to stop this. Because what's today? Wednesday. Monday, we were sitting over here. It was Monday or Sunday or whatever, and I was telling them about my Nazarite vow and all of this, and when the Father was telling me things, and I was trying to explain to them how things that the Father has told me to do with my hair, and it's in the Word, and I was trying to remember where's that scripture, and I wanted to read it to them. I heard him say to me, it's in Ezekiel 5, but then I thought again, and I thought, maybe it's 13, and I'm looking all over. But I heard first Ezekiel 5. But I quickly skimmed through. I didn't see it. And I thought, no, it's not there. And then I went. And then I said to Elsie, just Google quickly. So she Googled Ezekiel 5. That was the first time. Then yesterday was the second time. And then he brought it to my attention and he said, Natalia, do you see how insensitive you are? I give you the answer, I tell you, but you will still want to turn to this tree of knowledge of good and evil because you are so accustomed to doing that. And let me tell you something, I only learned Google, ask Elsie, I only learned Google maybe about 4 years ago. I never knew how to use it. I never knew how to turn to that. Father used to always lead me in the Word. I can be preaching and he'll say, go here, go there, go there. And I'll know where the scriptures are because he leads me. But now, I have become insensitive. And that's what he's trying to tell me. Mm-hmm. Because we are so quick to learn the ways of the world. And we've turned to the ways of the world. And now he's saying we need to come back to eating from that tree of the knowledge. Of that tree of life, and not from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Everything comes from him. And so that is why we have to get to this place now of where we need to understand that the Father is wanting to raise up a people now that are going to have to take authority. He's going to have to give us that authority to walk in. And that is why yesterday we have to start believing. If I'm going to pray for the sick, they're going to have to recover because they can't go to hospital anymore. If I'm going to have to pray for something, it's going to have to be because this is the way we're going to have to be. But you see, we are going to have to come out from this place of where we have covered ourselves because of the sin. So we are going to unfold this message week by week. We are going to unfold the message to understand what are the things that are in our way, keeping us from being able to walk with him in the cool of the day in the Garden of Eden. So that every week we are going to have to look and see, so that when we get to the place, if this has to be a series that has to take us until we get to Yom Teruah, until we get to Sukkot, then this is what we need to do, because he is wanting fruit. And he is wanting a people that need to return back to eating from the right tree. And you must understand, I am not here to sit there and make myself out to, I just do everything that's right. I give you my weaknesses. I give you what I do wrong so that you may understand, just like I do wrong, we all do wrong. And if I don't tell you my failures, then how do you learn? If I'm only here to tell you my successes. Nobody wants to expose themselves to anything because everybody must see that you are up there. Please. Nobody is higher than the other. We all have to walk this path. And we all have to be able to be accountable to one another in helping each other in having to walk this path. And like I said, in this week alone, I've now had my second rebuke. So, when I read that Shema, yesterday when I sat outside reading it, I said, Father, please. And now I just read it, and the next incident happens, and again I'm so insensitive. So I read it, really realized that I've already done, and now I'm going to do it again. And so you see, we are in this place now that we are going to have to trust the one that is speaking. You're not going to be able to be in that place of saying, did he speak? Was that him? You are going to have to know that you know. That's what he said, because if he's going to say to you, pack your bag, you need to go now, you are going to have to learn. And you are going to have to say, okay, he's going to say to you, go straight, go here, now there, turn left, here, turn right. I've had a friend of mine, this is exactly how we went. The father told her, time is short, go south. We were in Israel, and the father told, she lived in Jerusalem 29 years. And then the father said to her, time is short, go south. She said, what do you mean? He says, time is short. You need to get out of Jerusalem, you need to go south. So she said, okay, where do I start? start where the south starts. So we went to the Dead Sea, and from the Dead Sea we started going to the very first city that was south, which is Arad. So Arad is the city, which is where I live. That is the border of the end. It's the end of the Judean desert and the beginning of the Negev desert, and the Negev desert is the south. So that is really south. So we went there, and she says, okay, Father, now. He says, carry on driving. Then he said, go right. Then Elsie would turn right. Then he'd say, go left. Then she'd turn left. And she's just driving. She doesn't know where she's going. We don't even know where we're going. But she's just going as he's leading her. And she comes to this beautiful modern area, the brand new area of Arad. It's a beautiful area. And all of a sudden he says, stop the car. She stops. She says, stop. He gets out. She gets out of the car and he says to her, this is where you're going to live. This is where you're going to move to. She said, okay. And then that's when he said to me, he said, this is where you're going to live. I said, huh? I said, I don't even know this place. I said, where's Arad? I mean, at least she knew it. I didn't even know Arad. I always wanted to go to Jerusalem. He didn't want me to go to Jerusalem. He wanted me to go to Arad. And you know that today, she's living in that very area. She's got a house that she lives in that very area where he told her. A year later, she moved into the city or the town or whatever. And then a few months later, she found this house. And today, she's got a house in the very area. It's like literally, it's almost a stone throw away from where we stopped the car to where the house is that she lives. Are we in that place that we can be led like that? Because the day is going to come that might be it. And that's why he's trying to make us sensitive to be a sheep that knows his voice, so that at the voice of a stranger we cannot follow. But we need to get to the place of where we need to start to become submitted and surrendered to him in every area of our lives, so that we may be able to be a sheep that hears his voice. And what we're going to do next week, we will look at chapter 4, that we may understand exactly what has happened there. And then from there, build this deeper. Because we have now seen that he has said that Nahesh is going to feed off the dust of the earth. So Hasatan feeds off our flesh nature. He needs a body in which to operate. That is what we learned last week with those Nephilim. The Nephilim need a body in which to operate. They cannot operate without a body. That's why when they rebuked the demons out of when Yeshua rebuked the demons out of Legion, where did they ask to go into? The pigs. And then what did the pigs do? They went and got drowned in the sea. So they went back to the water spirits where they come from, because they were water spirits. Remember what happened when the flood took place. Those Nephilim were the babies of the giants, of the watchers. It was the watchers and the earthly woman. They were immortal beings. The watchers were the seraphim. They were part of like what we would understand today as being the archangel. They were archangels. Archangel Michael. They are the hugest angels. They are the huge angels that protect. They protect the earth. And these watchers came and they had a meeting on Mount Hermon and decided to sleep with the daughters of men. And to them were born giants. And those giants were called the Nephilim. And then those Nephilim giants became destructive. They started to eat even the flesh of human beings. They ate everything in sight. And eventually the Father saw only evil upon the earth, and he destroyed the earth. But what happened to those babies? They died. But were they able to physically die? No. He said, you will stay on the earth. From the earth you came, and from the earth you will remain. And those Nephilim hated the human beings. So they hate us. So those evil spirits hate us. But they need a body by which to operate. Hasatan has got them using all of them to come against us. So at the end of the day, they're going to feed off our flesh nature. So every single time we come into our flesh nature, they are operating through us. And we are now being able to do destruction on the earth as opposed to good. And that's what we need to be aware of. So this is where we will finish today. Let's just close up in prayer. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you for your word, my King. I just want to thank you for this season and this time that we're in, where you are wanting to bring us back to once again eat from the tree of life. Father, for so long we have eaten from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For so long we have conformed ourselves in this place of where we think that we can please you by the outer things that we do, and yet we are not those that are truly at a place of where we are a sheep that hears your voice, and the voice of a stranger we will not follow. Father, and I know that right now we are in such a critical time because you are wanting fruit. And the fruit that we bear has to do everything with this, our spirit man being developed. Because the more fruit of the Ruach we have in us, the more of the Ruach is operating through us. But the more works of the flesh is there, the more the enemy is operating through us. Father, we do not want him to feed off our flesh nature anymore. We do not want to be like an Esau that was willing to sell his birthright for a plate of soup. But how often we are willing to sell the best that you have for us because we're wanting to have our way in our flesh nature. Forgive us for what we do, Abba. Forgive us for where we are insensitive to you. Forgive us for where we have become dull of hearing because we have allowed ourselves to be so controlled by our mind, our will, our emotions, by our flesh man, as opposed to being controlled by the Ruach of Yahuwah. Father, I ask you to please forgive me, Father, where I myself am so insensitive in what you're wanting to do in this hour. And I am one who knows your voice, yet I do not obey. What is it? What is it that we will hear you and yet we will not obey? Forgive us, Abba, my Father. Forgive us, Abba Yahuwah. For where we are so accustomed to doing things according to the way things are done on a daily basis, and to the way we have been taught, and to the way we have conformed to the ways of the world, that we have now got to learn, almost like a baby that has to learn from scratch, what it means to take its first step, what it means to fall and stand up again, what it means to be bold, to be able to stand. And you need to take us as little children now, Father. We want to come before you as little babies now, little children, to say, once again, take us what it means to be able to strip us naked, that we can once again come and sap and come and eat from that tree of life. And Father, I pray that you will help us. Truly, Abba, my Father, those things that are there, because if we pray, you will reveal, you will show, because I just prayed. I've been praying and saying, Father, show me what is there. Father, I ask you, show us what is there so that you can reveal it, bring it to surface, so that we may not be those that will be dulled, but that we will be those that will be sensitive to who you are and to what you want us to do, because we are those that are supposed to return back to our original state of where we were called to subdue this earth. And so I thank you, Abba, that you will teach us, that you will lead us, that you will guide us, that we will once again be able to be those that will be stripped of all our clothes so that we may stand before you naked. And forgive us, Father, where we've put so many of these fig leaves on us, where we have so much fig leaves on us that we are so covered that we need to be stripped layer by layer. Layer by layer, you have so much to strip from us so that we can finally come and stand before you. And so I ask you that, Father, in this time, that you will start to strip us layer by layer. And we ask you, Father, that even though it's difficult, even though this flesh man does not want to conform, teach us what it means to truly surrender and conform to you and to your ways. I praise and I thank you for this in Yeshua's name. Amen.